We're on to week 5 of the 2019 college football season, and today I'm going to preview the SEC games, and I'm going to be honest, there's really only 2 that interest me. But those 2, I think, are both going to be pretty good games. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a preview of all the top 25 teams that are in action, that aren't in the SEC, because I'm doing that today. And then, of course, on Thursday, I'll do a third preview and prediction video where I'll cover any other teams that didn't fit into Tuesday or Wednesday that I think are interesting for one reason or another. But let's get going today. Week 5, SEC.
We about to turn it on.
All right, we have 4 teams on a bye week this week in the SEC. Georgia and Tennessee, both on a bye week. Of course, they play the following week. We also have, Missouri is on a bye week and LSU on a bye week. So 10 SEC teams in action, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 games involving SEC versus SEC. So potential for some pretty good games. I already told you, I really think only 2 of these games are all that interesting. As usual, all the numbers that I use in today's video, the spreads, the odds, the money lines, the over-unders, all that stuff is going to come straight from betnow.eu. There's a link in the description of this video. If you click that link, it'll take you over to betnow.eu and you can get yourself signed up with an account. Use promo code Uncle Lou when you get signed up. That's one word, Uncle Lou, and they're going to give you a bonus on whatever you deposit. Make yourself some money betting on these college football games. I can tell by reading the comments that you're all geniuses on college football. Why not make some money? All right, here we go. We're going to start with some noon games and work our way up to the night games. Kicking off Saturday, 12 o'clock on ESPN. We've got 23rd ranked Texas A&M going on the road. Or is this a neutral site game? Anyway, they're playing Arkansas. Does it really matter? No. They could be playing this game in a dollar store parking lot. You know Texas A&M is going to win. Texas A&M's a 23.5-point favorite in this one. They come in fresh off of that close loss to the Barn last week. They're sitting at 2-2. They also lost to Clemson earlier in the year. Arkansas, of course, 2-2, but a terrible 2-2. This past week, they lost to San Jose State. They're just a terrible team. This game does come on 12 o'clock ESPN. Texas A&M 23.5-point favorite. I like that number 23.5 on a big favorite. Texas A&M is going to win this game. Arkansas, they can't seem to put an offense together. Defensively, they can't seem to slow down any other teams. If you look at what Texas A&M has done against inferior opponents, they have scored a lot of points. They put up a ton of points against Lamar, a ton of points against Texas State. I think they scored in the 40s in one of those games and 60s in the other. They're probably going to get into the 40s here against Arkansas, don't you think? I mean, Arkansas is just really that bad. Can Arkansas score in the 20s, which is what I think probably Arkansas would have to do to cover this 23.5 points? I don't think so. Yes, they lost to Clemson, but they did a pretty good job for the most part of slowing down that Clemson offense. Now, Clemson helped them out with some below-average quarterback play from Trevor Lawrence, which has continued so far this season. But still, you hold Clemson to, 24 points, actually, I think. Did they win that? What did they win that game? Was it 24-14? Something like that? Anyway, they really did a pretty good job for the most part of slowing Clemson's offense down. They held Auburn to, I think, 28 points. That's not as impressive. Auburn's offense is, well, it's terrible. More on that here in a little bit. I just can't take Arkansas. Tennessee is back. They may be worse than Tennessee, honestly. There's just no way I can take Arkansas. It would have to be closer to 27 or 28 points, I think, for me to take Arkansas. I'm probably not going to play this game, but if you make me, I'll take Texas A&M as long as I can get it under 24, and right now it's 23.5. Give me the Aggies. Northern Illinois at Vandy. I know y'all can't wait to watch this game. 12 o'clock on SEC Network. Set your alarm clock now. Cancel any plans you had for lunchtime on Saturday. This ought to be a real hell of a game here. Northern Illinois is 1-2. Vandy is 0-3. Vandy has lost to 3 pretty good teams. Maybe we make an argument on whether or not Purdue is all that good or not, but they've lost to UGA and LSU, which of course are both top 5 teams in almost any poll you look at. And they lost to Purdue. Now, Purdue only has 1 win on the season. They got blown out by TCU, but still, Vandy went to Purdue, lost. So I don't think Vandy is a very good team. They're 0-3, and they're 0-3 against a spread. So not only are they losing, they're losing by more than most people think they're going to lose. They're a 6-point home favorite in this one against Northern Illinois. This will be the worst team they've played, without question. I'm going to take Vandy at home here under a touchdown in the 6 points. I think Vandy probably wins this game somewhere in the 10 to 14 point range. Give me the Commodores, lay those 6 points. Ole Miss at Bama, 3:30 on CBS. Man, there must not be anything to choose from this week for CBS, right? Thank God they had a great game last week featuring my Georgia Bulldogs. But since Georgia's off this week, CBS has no choice but to go with their backup plan, the Crimson Tide. Ole Miss comes to Tuscaloosa as a 35.5-point underdog. In this one, Bama, of course, ranked second. Ole Miss is 2-2. They lost to Memphis and Cal. Listen, Cal is not that good of a team. What are they ranked? 13 or 14 or 15 in these polls that came out this last week? That's just completely ridiculous. Just because they're the only undefeated team left in the Pac-12 doesn't mean they're a top 15 team. Cal is not a top 15 team. I don't know what people are doing voting Cal into the top 15. You want to put them 20 to 25 somewhere? Fine. They're not a top 25 team, but they were good enough to beat Ole Miss, which isn't saying much. And then Memphis, of course, that was the first game of the year they lost that one. Their 2 wins are against lowly Arkansas, and Southeast Louisiana. Bama's going to win this game, right? How long do they leave the starters in? Probably. I hate to say that about Ole Miss, but it just is what it is. 35.5. Bama is a team like Ohio State and usually like Central Florida, although not last week. Sorry for your abrupt end of your season there, Golden Knights. But, there's certain teams, Oklahoma, Bama, Ohio State, usually UCF. You can bank on them to cover on some of these higher point spreads because they just have the ability to score so many points quickly in the first half. Take Ohio State, for example. Justin Fields had 6 touchdowns just in the second quarter last week. So, yeah, they take him out at halftime. But still, Justin Fields is putting 42 points on, or 36 points on the board. 42 if you include extra points, just in one quarter. Alabama with Jerry Jeudy and Waddle and what's the other guy's name? Devontae Smith. I mean, 4 or 5 plays on offense for Bama can be 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first quarter, even against Ole Miss, right? So 35.5 is not a whole lot of points, in my opinion, to lay with Bama. They're at home. Saban will be happy because this is a 3:30 game. Fans might even stay until halfway through the fourth quarter of this one. It is possible. I'm going to take the Gumps here and lay to 35.5. Towson at Florida, 4 o'clock on the SEC Network. Florida's ranked 9th in some polls that don't matter, and they're a 35.5-point home favorite in this one. They're, of course, 4-0. Towson's 3-1. Florida is 90th in rushing. Can they get that figured out this week against a terrible team? They're 53rd in points scored. I don't think that'll be a problem here. They scored a ton of points on UT Martin earlier in the year. 45, I think they scored on UT Martin, right? Well, didn't they win that one 45-0? Struggled against Miami, a 1-score win. Miami's a terrible team. Scored in the 20s there. Struggled against Kentucky. Kentucky's not a good team. Scored in the 20s there. So offensively, they've been sort of stuck in a rut. I understand the whole thing about Kyle Trask, but I mean, listen, Florida fans, it's just beyond ridiculous at this point. You have to admit one of a couple of different things here. You guys are trying to convince us that Kyle Trask is 100 times better than Felipe Franks and that you knew that all along. Well, I don't understand. You can't spend the last year and a half trying to tell me and anyone else that'll listen that Florida's about to win a bunch of national championships because they got Dan Mullen and he's an absolute quarterback genius and guru. But now you're telling me that quarterback genius and guru started the wrong quarterback at Florida for the last year and a half? It just makes no sense. Which is it? Is Dan Mullen an idiot? Your head coach, is he an idiot who started the wrong quarterback for the first year and a half? Or is Kyle Trask not as good as y'all are making him out to be? He came off the bench against Kentucky and looked good in the fourth quarter, and he played good against one of the worst Power 5 teams on planet Earth, Tennessee. Let's see what he does this week against something called Towson. I have a feeling we're going to have to go another week of hearing about how amazing Kyle Trask is. They're a 35.5-point favorite. Towson's scoring 40 points a game. They ain't scoring 40 points a game in this one. I know Florida's offense is in the toilet, but their defense is still pretty good. Florida's got some injuries. I'm expecting Florida to rest a lot of players this week because they've got a brutal stretch of games coming up. Florida does. Check their schedule. There's some losses on deck for you, Florida, but not this week. Give me the Gators late at 35.5. All right, and the last two games of the day, the night games, are the ones that I think are actually interesting, and it's possible either team could win these games. Listen, these first four games, you know who's going to win. You don't even have to watch them. It's just a matter of do these teams cover or not, pretty much. These last two games, I think you can make a legitimate case that these games could go either way. But up first, we've got 7 o'clock ESPN. Mississippi State goes on the road to a 7th-ranked Barn. Barn is an 11-point favorite in this one, and I'm just going to tell you now that's too much. Mississippi State's 3-1. They housed Kentucky last week, 28-13, so they beat them by 15. Much worse than what Florida beat them by, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Their loss was to Kansas State, 31-24. But Kansas State has surprised some people this year. They're actually a pretty good team. Turns out, if you do a diligent job going out to look for a coach, you can actually pluck a pretty good one from a group of 5, or in this case, an FCS school. There might be some other teams that have ran through a laundry list of piss-poor coaches over the last 10 years that might want to hire whoever it is Kansas State hired to conduct their coaching search. But that team's off this week before getting humiliated at home next week, so there's no point in spending all that much time talking about them today. But Mississippi State's a pretty good team, 3-1 at the Barn, who, of course, is undefeated. Close win over Oregon. Beat Texas A&M last week. What was it, 28-20? Is that what the final ended up being in that one? Something like that. I may have that a little bit off. Two teams that can't pass the ball here. My God, this is going to be like watching a game from 40 years ago, isn't it? Yeah. Mississippi State's 106th in America in passing. That's terrible. In modern day time, listen, I've been crying about Georgia's passing game for years. They were 72nd last year. That's how many spots? What is that, 34 spots? You're 34 spots behind where Georgia was last year, Mississippi State. You cannot throw the ball. Now, they run the ball okay. They're 30th at running the ball, and that's what they're going to try to do. And they've got a pretty good running back. This may be the best running back Auburn has faced this year. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it is. We'll see how they fare against that. Auburn's got the best defensive line in all of college football, in my opinion. It's not even close. Defense overall, really, really good. So Mississippi State's going to try to run the ball. What's Auburn going to do? Well, they can't pass either, can they? No, this Bo Nix is terrible, man. What a bill of goods we were sold. I'm convinced now. The only legitimate reason that Bo Nix is starting has got to be nepotism. That's it. It's got to be because of his daddy. Because he's no good. He can't throw the ball. Joey Gatewood can't be that bad. He can't be as bad as Bo Nix. I refuse to believe it. Auburn's not that great at running the ball either. The numbers, when you look at Auburn's rushing numbers, they don't tell the full story, and we'll get into a little bit of that in a minute. I don't want to spend an hour doing it, but I'll break a few things down for you. But I mentioned how bad Mississippi State was at throwing the ball, 106th, right? Guess what the Barn is when it comes to passing offense? 116th! Jesus Christ, man, what are you doing with this Bo Nix? Listen to me. Jeremy Johnson, John Franklin III, Sean White, Bo Nix. These are all the same people. Yep, probably have the same results too. What a shock that would be. Yeah. Okay, Auburn's running game. Now, when you look at the numbers, they put up some pretty good numbers. Number one, they had one game where they rushed for like 400 yards or something against a toilet bowl like FCS team. So you can almost throw that out. Let's dig into look at Texas A&M last week against Texas A&M. Auburn's number one running back, and really their only running back. They're doing this again here. They're getting one running back, they're running them into the ground. Booby Whitlow, this Booby Whitlow, 67 yards last week against Texas A&M, 3.7 yards a carry. So don't try to tell me, well, you only ran the ball 4 times with a 6-7. No, 3.7 yards per carry for a total of 67 yards. Shivers was the next closest running back on your team in terms of yards against Texas A&M. He had 14 yards, 2.3 yards per carry. Now, your numbers are a little bit inflated because you ran that jet toss sweep thingamabooby to Swartz, who's the fastest man on the planet, and he ran like a 70-yard touchdown. So that gave you 70 yards rushing. on what was really a gimmick play. But when you look at Auburn's regular running attack with its running backs, it's terrible. And Bo Nix can't run the ball either. 12 rushes against Texas A&M for 38 yards, an average of 3.2 yards per carry. Whitlow for the year is only running at 5 yards per carry. That's less than he ran for last year. Auburn's running game is not good. It's not good. And Bo Nix can't throw the ball. Auburn's offense is in a really bad spot right now. In my opinion, they are extremely lucky to be undefeated at this point in the season. And those are a lot of the reasons I just went over of why the barn is not in the Uncle Lou top 10 and likely never will be. Check Auburn's schedule too over the next 4 or 5 games, and you will see a couple of L's on there. Not to mention the 2-game stretch they have in December, which they know they're losing, which is why they cried to the SEC office in the offseason and got that Georgia and Alabama game split more up in the season, moving the Georgia game way up in the year. Anyway, I think 11 points is a little too much for the barn here. I think they do win because it's at home, tough place to play there. If this was under 10, I'd probably take the barn. Since it's over 10, I'm going to take Mississippi State and say and hope that they can keep this within 7 to 10 points. Give me the visiting team, Mississippi State, and those 11 points. All right, the last game of the night in the SEC, 7:30 on the SEC Network. You got Kentucky on the road at South Carolina. 2 teams that are really reeling here. Kentucky's taken a couple of back-to-back losses. Of course, close one at home to Florida, and then lost last week to Mississippi State. South Carolina got absolutely housed the last 2 weeks by both Alabama and Missouri. Bama beat them 47-23. Missouri beat them 34-14. So 2 really bad weeks. They were excited about this Ryan Hilinski guy after Jake Bentley got hurt. And he did look pretty good against a nobody team that you play. It was Charleston Southern, is that what it was? Yeah, and he scored 70 points, and Hilinski was winning the Heisman, and blah, blah, blah. He sounded like Tennessee fans. It was ridiculous. And then Bama and Mizzou happened. Bama's understandable. Mizzou, hard to justify losing that game by 20 points. So South Carolina's sitting at 1-3. Kentucky's sitting at 2-2. 2 teams that desperately need a win here. And what is this going on with the newspaper in Columbia, South Carolina that made some kind of a joke? If you don't know, the quarterback for Ryan Hilinski, South Carolina, has a brother who committed suicide a few years back. And his family has started a foundation called I think it's called the Hilinski Hope Foundation, or it might be just the Hope Foundation. I think it's the Hilinski Hope Foundation, though. Anyway, to sort of raise awareness and things like that about suicide and promote suicide prevention and things like that. After South Carolina got humiliated by Missouri, the newspaper in Columbia, South Carolina, which I believe is called The State, I'll put the headline up if I can find a picture of it on the internet, but they put a headline up that was basically a joke tying South Carolina's loss to Missouri to Ryan Hilinski's Hope Foundation, which was just, first of all, I don't know who wrote that headline. I don't know which editor approved that headline, and I don't know how it got past the actual publisher of the paper. That was awful. Somebody should probably lose their job over that. But anyway, I digress. Let's back to football here. Kentucky at South Carolina. Kentucky, of course, has beat South Carolina 5 straight years. They play every year, both being in the SEC. So this isn't one of those things where, well, yeah, they beat us 5 times, but it's over, most of those wins are in the 40s. No, they beat you in 18, 17, 16, 14, and 13. 5 years straight. I have a feeling they make it 6. I just think South Carolina is spiraling right now. Will Muschamp, the seat is getting warm. I don't think they're going to fire him this year because of his record over his first 3 years, which I know was not great or stellar or anything like that, but he had more wins his first 3 years at South Carolina than any other South Carolina coach in history, and I think that buys him a year. And let's just be real. I know you hate losing to Missouri. You're going to hate losing to Kentucky this week, too. You weren't doing anything meaningful this year because of your schedule. You had to play Alabama. You have to play at Georgia. You play Clemson later in the year. You still got to play Texas A&M. You still got to play Florida. Even if everything went right for South Carolina this year, you were looking at a 5 or 6 win season. So it was sort of a throwaway season. I know people don't like to hear that, but you just got too much distraction and noise at South Carolina. The fans aren't happy. The players aren't happy. Jamias Williams quit this week. He said, that's it for me. I've done my 4 games this year. I'm just going to sit out the rest of the year. I'm entering the transfer portal and getting out of here. So it's just not a good scene in Columbia. It does help that this is a home game, coming back from that road game at Missouri. I just have a feeling Kentucky has your number lately. and you're just sort of doing the death spiral right now, Carolina. You just kind of are. I think Kentucky comes in and wins a very close game. This is going to be one of those back and forth, come down to the wire type of games, I think. I'm going to go with a visiting team. Give me Kentucky and the 2.5 points. All right, that's it. Nothing amazing. Definitely not quite as good as last week's SEC slate with Tennessee and Florida, which was a blowout, but interesting to watch for a variety of reasons. Of course, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Auburn. You had several marquee matchups last week. Don't really have that this week in the SEC, but like I said, I do think those 2 night games are both interesting and worth watching for various reasons. Most of the noon and 3:30 games, you already know who's winning those. It's really just a matter of how much do they win by type of thing. But anyway, that's it for the SEC. Again, we'll be doing the top 25 tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And join us tonight at 10 p.m. for the Uncle Lou Live Show. It's a call-in show we do every Tuesday and Thursday night here on the channel. Do it on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. too. So tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, the Uncle Lou Show Live. We're taking phone calls, talking to you guys. You let me know what you think about these games or some of the other games that are coming up this weekend. Appreciate you guys watching, and have a good morning.